Gray is out, so I am going to take this dresser and give it a fresh new look with the Sherwin-Williams Color of the Year. I'm gonna be adding pole wrap to give it a cool fluted look, and I'm gonna be using my sprayer, so this makeover starts right now. I'm starting off this furniture flip by removing the hardware. I'm gonna update it with a more modern pole that goes on top, so I'm just taking all these off and setting them aside. You might recognize this flip. This is one of my most famous flips. It has almost 2 million views on my YouTube channel. And back when I did it, I really love it, but it's gray, and gray is just out. If you still love gray and have it in your home, it's okay, but it is out. So I'm giving it a refresh today with a really on-trend color from Sherwin-Williams. It's their color of the year, and it's called Redend Point, and it's an earthy, neutral brown tone pink, and it's gonna look gorgeous on here. So this was in my son's room for 2 years, so it's not super dirty, but I put a new dresser in his room a while back, and this has been in the storage unit for a couple of months. So it's just a little dusty, so I'm gonna use some cleaner and get those cobwebs off and then rinse it with water. I'm gonna be using a primer on here, so I don't need to strip this paint back, but it is a little textured in some areas because I used a roller to put this on. So I just have a super fine 220 sanding pad, and I'm just gonna smooth out any areas that seem a little rough to me. Now comes the fun part. I'm gonna use pole wrap for the first time. If you guys haven't seen this, it's designed to go and wrap around poles like in basements as a decor feature, but a lot of people use it in DIY. It gives a cool fluting effect. I'm gonna use it on the front of the drawers. I know you've seen me do this before with little trim pieces and individually cut them and put them up. I'm hoping this is gonna be easier. So I'm going to measure all my drawer fronts and then start cutting this with my miter saw. Pole wrap comes in a number of lengths, and to save money, I got a really big roll. So this one is actually 48 inches long and 9 feet tall. I've seen people just cut these rolled up like this, so that is what I attempted to do, and I did get a little bit of a wavy cut. This is my first time working with pole wrap, so I'm definitely learning as I go, and I learned later down in the road, and I'll show you that if you make the roll a lot tighter, then your lines won't be so wavy, but I just figured I could fix this with the sander down the road. It is really easy to cut lengthwise like this. I measured everything out, and then I held them up each to the drawer just to make sure that I was making the cuts correctly because I didn't want to waste any of the pole wrap. I have the first one cut. It's a little wavy, but nothing that I can't fix with the sander after I get it attached. If you don't have a brad nailer, you could just use some wood glue and kind of put books on here to get this to stick. I think I'm just gonna start with a brad nailer. I might need to use a combination of glue and brad nailer, but we'll see. This is my first time doing it, so we're gonna learn together. I pretty quickly realized that the brad nailer wasn't going to work. To get this to stick down and lay flat, I would have had to put a million holes in this, and I didn't want to fill them because of the way that's fluted. It would be really hard to get the wood filler in there and make it nice and smooth. So I do end up adding glue later, but first we have to fix the wavy problem I have. So wherever it was hanging over the edge, I just used an orbital sander with a 60 grit sandpaper, which is very rough, and it's going to eat through the finish really quickly just to even everything out. And I use the sides of the drawer as my guide. So by the time I got to drawer number 2, I decided I wanted to use wood glue and the brad nails to hold all my pole wrap in place. So I'm just putting wood glue on here, spreading it out evenly with a chip brush, and then I'm going to apply the pole wrap on top and then pin it with those brad nails. I only use 6 brad nails per drawer. I put them each in the corners, and then I put a couple in the middle as well. And I tried to aim to get them in the little divots between the fluting, that way I wouldn't have to fill them, and hopefully they'll just get covered up by paint. Okay, 3 drawers down, here is what I learned. I like using a combination of the wood glue and the brad nailers, and then I'm using clamps in any parts that are kind of sticking up from the glue, not adhering. And I busted out my Festool because I basically can't get these super straight, these cuts super straight. So I'm having to go around and sand around to just even it out, make it even with the drawer. My Festool does that a lot faster than my little handheld orbital sander. That definitely gets the job done, the small orbital sander, but it goes faster using my professional sander. So I think those are all the key learnings. So let's keep going. I've got 6 more drawers to do. So I was having to do so much sanding to get the sides even, so I decided to make the pole wrap really tight to hopefully alleviate some of that wavy line when I cut, and this helped a lot, but I still had to do sanding. Once I got everything in place, there would just be little curves that would be sticking out over the top of the drawer, so I'm just using the sander and using the sides again as that guide to sand that down. There's probably a better way to cut this so that it's super even, but I'll have to think on that. If you have any suggestions for me, you can always leave them down in the comments. This is what you get with DIY when you're using products that aren't necessarily meant for furniture, but it works. One other thing I want to mention is that I don't think you have to have a brad nailer to do this project. I think you would just be fine putting wood glue on here, placing the pole wrap exactly where you want it, and clamping it as it dries, maybe putting some bricks on there so it lays really nice and flat, and then coming back in the next day and sanding any wavy lines that you have. Once all my wood glue was dry and I was able to remove the clamps, I took a 120 sandpaper and just sanded the surface of all the pole wrap. The pole wrap is MDF, but it has a very thin oak veneer on it. So just any little chips and fraying I got from cutting it with a miter saw, I'm just sanding those out smooth so it'll be ready for primer. Since this is such a large dresser, I am going to be using my Wagner Sprayer today, and I'm setting up my Wagner large spray shelter that I always spray in. It protects my garage and it's really easy to set up. I can set this up by myself, but on filming days, Maggie's here with me, so she helped me set this up. It just goes a lot faster with 2 people, but you can do it with 1 person. I have definitely done it. And I'm going to be painting these drawers separately. Since they have so much detail on the front, I want to spray them laying horizontally like this, so I am just taping off the rest of the drawer to protect it from overspray. I'm gonna prime my dresser and I'm gonna use my sprayer to do it. I'm using an acrylic and urethane paint today. This is like a new process for me, so I'm using the primer for adhesion. I'm gonna use a gray primer because I'm using a pink color, and that's just gonna help with the coverage and everything. I'm using a water-based primer. I like using water-based primers for 2 reasons, because it has really easy cleanup, and you don't have to worry about it being flammable or anything. It's a lot safer to use. And I have used this particular primer in my sprayer a lot, so I'm gonna get my primer ready to go. I'm using my Flexio 3500 that you guys have seen me use so much on my channel. I love it. It's gonna make this process go really fast. And I'm using the fine detail nozzle. That's gonna be great for furniture and fine finishings. If you are new to watching me use my Wagner sprayer, let me give you a little tour of it. It has a air power knob on top that you can adjust the airflow settings. And then it also has this knob right here that is going to control your material flow. When you are spraying side to side, you want to have the nozzle horizontal. And then if you want to spray vertical, you're going to have the nozzle pointing up and down. This particular primer I like to water down with 1 ounce of water for 12 ounces of paint, and I have it on my air power setting of 5, and I have my material flow pretty open. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm mostly priming for adhesion, and at one point the top was painted, but I did sand that down after I did the original makeover on this, so the top is raw wood, so I definitely wanted to prime that as well, just because paint is going to adhere and last longer over raw wood if it is primed. And this has a really strong grain on the top. I went back and forth of if I should grain fill this or not, but I decided not to because the pole wrap has that oak finish too. So it's going to be grainy as well. So I thought it would be cool to have the grain on top as well as on the pole wrap. Since I'm painting the drawers separately, I set up my medium tent and I was able to spray each of these in there and then move them to the side to dry. This primer is ready to recoat in an hour, and after I got it all on, I decided one coat was going to be sufficient, so I was ready to move on to my paint. My primer is dry, I'm ready to paint. I'm gonna use this interior exterior door and trim. I used a paint like this on my recent closet makeover, and I really like it. It's a urethane acrylic blend, but it's water-based, so it has easy cleanup, but it acts like an acrylic and a urethane. It's gonna be super tough, it's gonna be durable. I'm not gonna have to top coat this, so I got a semi-gloss because I got a deep base. If you weren't gonna use the deep base, they have an ultra white base that you can get satin in. Hopefully they will have this deep base in satin soon, because I would rather paint in satin, but we're gonna do semi-gloss. I don't think I'm gonna have to thin this out, so I'm gonna get it in my sprayer and see how it performs. So I didn't end up having to thin this out at all with water, which is really nice to just be able to put a paint in there and go. And as you noticed, I didn't strain this because it was out of a brand new can. When it's out of a brand new can, I typically don't strain, but you can if you want to. And I ended up spraying with the same settings that I did for my primer. So I have that airflow set at 5 and I have my material flow really open. When I'm working with my Wagner Sprayer, my two top tips that I have for you is to be about 6 to 8 inches from your dresser. I think a lot of people pull back too far when they're painting, so that's an important one to remember. And then tip number 2 is you really want to overlap your strokes by 30 to 50%. It just gives you a nice even finish and really good coverage. The Flexio 3500 is a lot lighter than models that I've used in the past, so it really helps with that hand fatigue, and it's so easy to use. I don't know if you've noticed here, but I'm using my left hand to paint. So I actually was able to switch between my left hand and my right hand as they were getting tired or fatigued from doing this top, and that's just how easy it is to use. I can even do it left-handed. I was also really impressed at how the paint and the sprayer got into all the little details and the crevices of the pole wrap. I think if you were using a brush, it would have been like really hard to get in there, but the paint sprayed on there really nice and evenly. Back for day 2, I thought I was gonna have to do a second coat on this dresser, but the coverage on this paint, I don't know if it's because I used a primer or what, or because I used the sprayer, but the coverage is really great and I am not needing a second coat. If I was gonna have to recoat, it's 4 hours in between those recoats. That's why I was waiting overnight. But I am so impressed with this paint. The way that it levels out, you cannot see any spatters, anything. Like, it looks so smooth. It looks like a factory finish. So if you're into a factory finish, you can really achieve it with this paint and the sprayer. It has a semi-gloss finish, which I'm not like a super huge fan of. I really, really want to try the satin, so hopefully I can do that on a future project. And the other thing I want to mention about this, I got this whole gallon for $53. Now granted, I don't have anything else I want to paint with this right now, but if you paint a lot of blacks, if you paint a lot of white, this is a really economical way to get a lot of paint in a gallon. They do have these in quarts as well, and those are around $20, so that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to buy this. Pro tip, I never do this, and I'm so glad I did it this time. I numbered all my drawers, so I am not confused at all about putting them back in. I'm always like, oh, I'll order them and I'll remember. You will not remember. Just put a little tiny mark here and we can just sand that off. Normally, you don't have to lay on your back like this to get your drawers in, but I don't want to scratch any of my paint, so I'm just being like really careful to make sure I get it right on the track so I'm not scratching the frame up at all. So I'm noticing I'm getting some of this like cupping on my drawer fronts. I could have probably done a better job of putting these on. So once this paint dries, I'm gonna put some glue in there and clamp these down, but I don't wanna mess with my paint. So I'll probably wait like a week or so for this to cure before I try to fix those with some wood glue and some clamps.
Christina coming to you from the future. I did have to fix these with a lot of glue and clamping. So if you're going to try this out, definitely use more glue. Have those clamps sit over there probably overnight before you start sanding or painting these.
I'm using a finger pull on here to go with this modern look we have going with the fluting. So I was just testing out pilot holes because I'm actually gonna have to drill holes in the back of my drawers and I do not want to mess up. So I found the correct bit that I need to get the right size holes. So I'm just gonna mark off the drawer and get all these in. Just to remind you, here is the gray dresser we started off with, and here it is now. I have so many thoughts about this dresser. I'm obsessed with the way that it turned out, but let's talk numbers because pole wrap is expensive. I spent $189 on one sheet of pole wrap, but I didn't use all of it. I probably used a third of it. So we're probably looking about $60 worth of product on here. Was it easier than making my own slats? Yes, it was, but it's gonna cost you more. So that's something you have to think about in the long run. But I love how even it is, it's evenly spaced. So even though it took a little bit of effort, I did save a lot of time using the pole wrap. Another thing I want to talk about is the top because I had sanded that down to raw wood and it has a lot of grain coming through, but the pole wrap has a lot of grain as well. So I decided not to grain fill the top. If you wanted that to be super smooth, you can definitely do that. But I like having the texture on the top and the texture on the pole wrap. I think it really complements each other. And talking about saving time, my Wagner Sprayer saved me so much time on this project. I think paint time total was like 20 minutes on the primer and then 20 minutes on the dresser. And this is a huge dresser. It has a lot of drawers, and how quickly I got it done and the smooth finish it gave me, I am just so in love with it. If you're interested in learning more about a sprayer and how to use it, I'll leave some videos right here for you guys. I will be back soon with another project. Let me know how you like this makeover, and I will see you guys next time.